they can. So let's share. Okay, can everyone see my screen?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So the whole point of this session, for many of you that don't know WESIE has been in existence for quite a long time now. At least we've been in existence for about 13 years. What may not be as popular to some of you is that we actually have like an academy. But the academy we run is not about training, like a lot of academies. Ours is actually literally like an academy that specializes in mentoring. We've been mentoring coaches and players, but more coaches. But recently, I felt the need that we need to start doing more for athletes. And we do that, which I'll explain more, really to help bridge the gap. What I found is that there's a lot of people sometimes that work hard, that are talented, but they find it hard to progress in the game of basketball, but in other sports. And like I said, this is not just about basketball. That's why I opened it to all athletes, because most times, if you're an athlete, most athletes have a dream. Most athletes want to go somewhere. Most people are doing the sport, whether it be basketball, whether it be football, because they love it. They're passionate about it, even if they're not getting paid. But what we work hard, hoping that at some point we will get a reward. So that's what this is about, how you can get to that place. Sometimes we may find that we're in an environment, especially in a place like Nigeria, but not just Nigeria, other places where we feel that a bit limited because of the opportunities, and just the environment around us, compared to maybe other people that are in another country. So that's what another reason that led me to start doing mentorship. Like I said, I've seen the results of it. So performance, mentorship, and selection. What this session is about how to raise awareness and how to help you to understand what you need to do in order to be able to progress in sports, in order to get to the next level and possibly achieve your dreams. And so most athletes, like I said, progress in sports is about being selected, but not just being selected, being chosen. And so the way to do that is about being consistent, building your confidence. And when you're consistent, naturally that helps to build your confidence. It kind of goes hand in hand, because the more you do something, like if you think about when you first started, I don't know, playing basketball or running, maybe the first day you got to the court, you used to shoot a bit funny. But with a lot of coaching, a lot of practicing your shot, you then start to shoot more, then you start to get more confident. So then you can take shots. Then coachability. The further you go in sports, it's the more important it is, the more coachable you are. Because some people feel, and you see this a lot, especially with elite players and professional players, that because they've got to a certain place, maybe they've had one opportunity to travel outside their normal place. Maybe they've had one opportunity to do something that other people in their environment have done. For some people, it starts to get to their head. They start to become less coachable. And in order for you to be selected and get chosen, wherever you are, you still need to be coachable. Even if you have a coach that is not the best of coaches, let me just put it that way, you still need to be coachable, and you need to be clear. So these are all things that I'm going to emphasize as we go along in this session. Um, and I just want you to remember this, that I've said, talent will get you noticed. People will notice you because of your talent. However, your performance on the day in competitions and in training is what will give you the opportunities you need. But in order for you to get selected, that's where consistency comes in. You need to be consistent at whatever you're doing in order for you to be selected. And those are the three things that hand in hand you need in order to get to the next level. So Let me just introduce myself briefly because I know some of you may have been seeing me around, some of you may have heard, some people may have checked us online. But so my name is Funke, essentially. And my main sport was basketball, although I tried a lot of sports, but basketball was the sport that I happened to fall in love with and stuck with through, through the good and the bad and the ugly. So in terms of some of the things I achieved, maybe these are probably two of the highlights of what I would say was my career as an athlete. Um, and that was winning back-to-back championships with Sheffield Hatters. At that time, um, in the sort of at that time in the 2000s and sort of about just before I started WESIE, so about 10, 15 years ago now, we won back-to-back championship with the best team in the country. That was the highest you could go to in the UK at that point. And that was the point at which around that time was around the time I started to think about what next. My options were to go to Europe to play pro, but then along the line, I gave birth to this vision called WESIE. But anyway, this was the highlight. And this was another place. I don't know if you can recognize me here, but in case you can't, this is me here. And this was at a World Championships training camp for for what's it called? For Nigeria. That was actually my first official encounter with Nigerian basketball. So we did that. I think that was that Texas? I think that was Texas. And that was a real defining moment for me. And those two things, kind of the experience I got from those two things. And they say sports is about moment. You win games in moments, you win championships in moments, but you have to have prepared for those moments. And I think these two occasions were key moments for me. There are other things that I could probably look back on, but these two experiences helped to define me and set the path for what I'm doing today. So anyway, so that was Nigeria. That was a training camp for the World Championship. Um, and now this is me now, years later and doing WESIE. So that's just a bit of background to who I am. I started WESIE first and foremost because I felt there was a need to create more opportunities for women in sports. So now there's a bit more interest. When I first started it, the interest was zero. So it's been a bit of a struggle as well. Then along the line, like I said, I felt like if we were going to help and support people in developing more, we don't just need to organize competitions. We need to be working with people in different ways, which was when I launched the WESIE Academy, basically. So that's who I am, kind of thing. And I want to start by just asking you guys a question, something for you to all reflect on. You don't have to necessarily answer me now, but um, I just want you to think about it within yourselves. So, do you feel like you're capable of more than you are currently showing the world within you? And I'm going to answer that question for myself. And I'm guessing that a lot of you here can also relate with that. I definitely feel like I'm capable of more than I'm doing, even with WESIE. And for me, success at where I am now, success is about making other people successful. For me, it's about making other people successful, creating opportunities that help people to achieve more in sports. So that's why I'm doing this, to help people ensure that people are selected, to help make sure that people are achieving the best of what they can achieve. That's what success looks like for me. For some of you, success might look like being selected to play for the national team. Success may look like being selected to play college in America, or being able to go pro, to play professionally and be paid in another country, either in Africa, in Europe, or in America. It could be anywhere. Um, Most of you here, if you play basketball, probably want more than where you are at the moment. And that's the whole point of this. And that's what this workshop I'm doing is about. It's about closing that gap, turning your potential, because you all have potential. Everybody has potential, so don't get it twisted. Don't get excited when people say, don't get overexcited when people tell you you have potential, because even the man on the street has potential. It's about being able to change that potential into something that ensures you're selected when it matters. You're selected to play in a better place than you're playing at the moment. Even for the WESIE competition, sometimes there's selection. Not all players get selected. That's just the nature of sports. But this workshop and what we're trying to do through WESIE Academy is to help ensure that people are selected for the next level, whatever that next level is for them. So this is the gap. So first and foremost, you need to be aware of the gap that nobody talks about. A lot of people talk about talent. Oh, this is a really talented person. Oh, this girl, this guy is so talented. And this person is such a hardworking person. The person they work. The person is such a hard work. Forgive me, sometimes I might just break into pidgin. I think I've been doing so much stuff on the ground at the moment, so sometimes it might just enter. But the thing is, I want to say is that talent and effort is not the problem. That's not the issue. And if I'm being honest with you, doing what I do, having done what I've done for many years, my own personal journey as an athlete, and what I've seen and experienced, even with the coaches, is that talent and effort is not scarce. There's a lot for every one person that's talented, for every one person that plays in the Premier League football or plays in the NBA or WNBA. I guarantee you I can find 5 people just as talented that could play in that sport. So talent is not scarce, is not a rare commodity. Effort as well is not the problem. I would probably say at least 70–80% of athletes in whatever sports you're talking about work hard. So working hard is not the issue. Even if you look at the top 100, maybe tennis players in the world, even there is a guy, I don't know if you guys follow other sports, but I am passionate about sports. So I don't just follow basketball, I actually follow other sports as well. And there's a guy, he's called Djokovic. He's one of the best tennis players ever at the moment. He's really establishing his legacy. And he said it himself that the difference between like the 100 top tennis players in the world, it is not the talent. They are all talented because you get to a certain level where everybody can shoot the ball, everybody can pass the ball, everybody can dribble the ball, and everybody works hard. You get to a level where you have a team, everybody turns up to practice, everybody does what they need. So that's not the problem, that's not the barrier, but there is something else, and that's what we're going to focus on here, that gap. So the first thing I want to say is that a lot of people get stuck. A lot of athletes in particular get stuck because of what's called, or what I call, an identity trap. What is an identity trap? Identity trap, and I will use myself as an example here, is really when your whole identity, you form your understanding of your identity and who you are is based on your performance. And that is a problem, because when your whole identity and who you are is based on your performance in your sport, that affects your confidence and that affects your decision making. And that kind of threatens who you are, and it stops us from seeing the fullness of who you are. And what happens when that happens? You start to overthink things, you start to chase validation, you start to be inconsistent in your performances, and you start to make bad decisions under pressure. This was me many years ago as an athlete. I mean, when it came to basketball, I ate basketball, I slept basketball, I dreamed basketball. My whole life was about basketball. It's like literally I ate, drank, breathed, and slept basketball. yes, it was an outlet for me in some respects, and it started off being an outlet, but along the line with coaches and different influences, it literally took over. There was a time everything about I see pictures of sometimes with my family and my close friends. I'm like, where was I when that was happening? Where was I when someone was being born? Because I was always on the basketball court. And the problem is that 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 affected my performance because I was very self-critical of myself, and it's good to be self-critical of yourself, but you have to do it in a healthy way. At the time, I wasn't doing it in a healthy way. I felt, and everyone around me felt I should do better. I should perform better. That didn't help. The fact that everyone around me felt I could do better when we played certain games and I didn't necessarily perform as well. And I felt I could have done better. So it was like a vicious cycle. Then what happened is I started to overthink things. And then I started to look for a validation outside myself. I started to want people. I remember when I went to that training camp in America, there was a training camp I went to when I went to the one I told you I went to where I was at the Nigerian training camp for the World Championships. And I can remember the WNBA coach saying, and I can remember asking him that, oh, what do you think? And I can remember him talking to me about leadership and that the fact that I was a leader, but I didn't even want to hear that. My ears was closed. All I wanted to hear, and I was praying that the coach would tell me that, your game is good. You can play, you're a good player. And I can remember another coach of mine saying to me that one day you will realize just how great and good a player you are. Because no matter how good I was and what I did within myself, I never felt good enough. And that affected my performances on the court. When it came to games, I was inconsistent and I didn't always make the right decision. So that's me using myself as a good example of what it means to have an identity trap kind of thing. And it's really important that you don't fall into that and you don't get stuck there because it's very easy to get stuck in that place, especially when you are having challenges in terms of performances or you're not being selected. So the truth about selection, when it comes to selection, is that selection in itself is a pattern. Performing, winning games, winning championships in sports is often about moments, but selections is like a collection of moments. Let me put it that way because it's about the pattern you establish. Selectors, like I was saying to you, the man on the street can have potential. Selectors, most people that are selecting players, scouting, they don't pick potential. They don't care about your potential because everyone showing up in that training has potential. What they are going to pick and what they look for is repeatable performances. So they're looking at, can you execute consistently? Can you pass the ball, get the ball to the open player consistently, not one off? Are you coachable? Or when things are not going your way or the coach is upsetting you, you get upset and it affects your performance. Is that the kind of player you are? Can we rely on you when there's pressure situation? Maybe there's a fight, maybe there's a problem, one way or another. Can you handle it? Those are the key things and the kind of things that majority of the people that are selecting are in the position to select you for the next level are looking for. And again, I gave an example of one of my struggles. I'm going to talk about one of the successes I've had at the same time. I went to another training camp. I actually went with a friend of mine. Again, this was in the States. And at that camp, I think it was a week long. I didn't know what to expect. I had never really, been exposed to, America or college players at the time. And, so I struggled with certain things. I wasn't clear, but without realizing it, this was automatic. This is just me naturally. Everything I did, I was consistent. I played hard. I played defense. Even when I didn't know or understand the plays, I showed up. I listened. When my coach spoke, I listened. I committed. Now, my friend that I went with, great point guard, great dribbler of the ball, great passer. But here's the thing. When I finished that camp, I got an offer to play in EuroLeague. EuroLeague, if you play basketball, is, the professional league. Everyone wants to go, even when people finish college in America or other countries, if they want to get to the next level for women's basketball, certainly Europe is the place. I got an offer to play in the EuroLeague that was going to be paid, bonuses, everything from the UK. I was one of the few people in that camp that got it. I hadn't been to college at the time, etc. Now, on the other hand, my friend, who has a bit of a temper, got really upset because she wasn't being played as much as she would have liked. She wasn't getting court time, and she lost her temper with them. And they gave her a bit more court time, but they weren't impressed. And basically, she got nothing out of it. So that for me is a key example of when you're consistent, you're coachable, you're reliable. You may not be the best player at that time, you may not be the best athlete, but you see, those three things I speak about is almost like the foundation you need in order to be a great player, in order to be a great athlete and to go the distance. And those are the things most scouts and most selectors look like. So, what is it that's going to separate you from being stuck, from you being an athlete that's stuck? And I say this as someone who has been on both sides of the coin, as someone that is stuck and someone that is selected. So, the first thing is clarity. You need to know what you actually want. You need to know your role. Because when you know your role, and sometimes if you're playing in a team, you might need to ask your coach. And some coaches are not always good at communicating, but you have to tease it out of them. And if you can't get it out of them, you might need to define your own role. I spoke about identity previously, and that's part of what identity is about as well. It's about you also knowing who you are and what you want, kind of thing. So it's one thing for your coach to say, okay, this is your role, this is what I want, but you also need to know who you are and your role as well. Because sometimes the coach might not, because I'm going to be honest, there are some coaches that don't really know what they're doing, but they're there. And sometimes you might just have to work with such coaches. So that comes from your own identity and you being clear on your identity. But anyway, so there's clarity. Most scouts, because clarity will help you to make the right decisions. Clarity will help you to stay focused when you're training. You know what you're training for, you know what you need to work with. And when you train with focus and you're clear on your role, you become confident and you become composed. So even when you're under pressure, when you're playing, you're competing and you're under pressure, you can still stay focused, you can still perform because you know who you are, you know what your role is. Then environment. And I'm going to be honest, some environments are more conducive than others, but you need to be in the right environment to grow because the wrong environment will limit you and will limit your progress. Now, here's the thing though, you can control that narrative. Sometimes you have no choice. Same way we don't choose where we're born, we don't choose what family we're born to. We can't always choose the environment we find ourselves in to. The right environment is important for your development and your visibility. But if you're not in an environment that feels right for you, you can control the narrative and you can control the situation so that the environment doesn't limit you in that season because life is about different seasons. You may not know how to do that, but that's part of the value of a mentor, which is what I'm kind of trying to say why a mentor is important and where it can help you. I have seen some of the coaches I've mentored go, not even from, major cities. Like, if I'm looking at Nigeria, for example, not even in places like Lagos or Abuja, but from other states that have literally gone from coaching on the streets to coaching internationally and going to international competitions. And that's mentorship that has helped to bridge that gap for them with their peers. So, the environment was not perfect. It's not me. I know for a fact the environment is far from perfect, but we've been able to work around that to ensure that it didn't hinder their development. It didn't stop them from being seen and selected by the right people at the next level. I have a coach that was headhunted. She used to run a program in Nigeria, not even in Lagos or Abuja. I don't want to mention the state because I don't want to give her away yet. But literally, she was called to come and coach in high school in America. So this goes to show you, for me, that's proof that your environment does not have to limit or stop you. Yes, it can cap your ceiling, but there are ways to get around it, and you can't do it on your own. Exposure. So people have to see you to choose you. If you're not visible, you can't get selected. So one of the key things that you need to is exposure. Exposure in the right place and consistently where it counts. And that may involve sacrifices. Don't be deceived. If you want to go anywhere or do well in sports, especially in sports, even more than other fields, there is a price and there are sacrifices that have to be made. But you want to show up at key events. If you show up at key events consistently, people start to recognize you, people start to know you, and then people start to call you. You don't even have to put yourself out there. People will start to look for you. So you need to keep making sure that you're visible in the right places and don't stop being visible. Because the more people see you, the more consistent you are. People that may not have seen you before, people that I've had scouts come to my events. I don't know when they're going to come. They don't come to every event, but I know that players have been picked. I remember the very first major tournament we did years back in Enugu. At least three girls from that tournament that weren't even very good got chosen to play abroad or to play college and to play professionally, whether Japan, whether America, different countries, just because they were visible and they showed up. So showing up in the right places will also aid, increase your chances of being selected. So what do mentors actually do? So I've said all of this because, basically, um, oftentimes in sports, a gap needs to be filled. And most people talk about hard training, talk about, showing up, going to practice, but very few people think about those other things, which is why I think that WESIE Academy and what we're doing is unique, because I'm not focused on the technical side of things. I know that there are good coaches that will even do better than I can, but it's the other things that over the years, from personal experience and from working from other people, I have seen that limits people. So it's clarity, like I said, accountability and habits. When you are clear on your role, what you're doing, and your identity, because a lot of people love sports, but they don't really have an identity in their chosen sport. They don't have an identity when they're competing, and that's a limitation. And they're not accountable to anyone. The coaches, as great as some coaches are, and I've had the opportunity to work with some really good coaches, they have to think about the whole team, not just you. A mentor is thinking about just you and how they can help you. And you become accountable to them as well in a different way that you're accountable to your coach. And then they help you to form the right habits. Having the right habits are important as well, because habits are the things that over time you start to do without thinking. So so when you're under pressure with a mentor, you've probably already gone through that situation somehow, some way, some shape before. So it helps you to prepare. And it's not, like I said, yes, you need to work hard, but some people get it wrong because they think it's all about hard work. No, it's about quality work. It's about smart working and quality work. So someone could train 3 hours a day and be training and doing the wrong thing and looking at the wrong thing. Another person could be training 1 hour a day, but because they have a great mentor, what they're able to achieve in the long run is more with less time. And that's the whole point about mentorship. It can accelerate your progress, help you get to where you're trying to get to quicker than otherwise. Then coachability, like I said, don't underestimate how valuable coachability are. If you're coachable as a player, you stand out, because no matter how good you are, or no matter how good you think you are, every athlete still needs a coach. If you think about, like I said, I follow a lot of different sports, not just basketball. Some of you, I don't know, you may or may not know Usain Bolt, really great runner. Messi, great footballer. Ronaldo, great footballer. Anthony Joshua, great boxer. Giannis, great basketballer. Um, who else can I think of? Everyone you can think of that's great. They still have a coach as an athlete. You never get to that point where you don't have a coach. So having a coach and being coachable is really, really important. And then your identity and staying consistent, being consistent through change, because changes will happen. Change is going to be constant as you go forward in sports. You being consistent through that change is dependent on your identity as well, and you being secure in your identity and who you are. So essentially, what I'm saying in a summary is that the mentor will help you join the dots between what you do, where you are, who you are, and what you want to become, and who you become, where and when. And then the other thing to be aware of is, to go the distance to maximize your performance is you need to understand the support system that is needed within sports, that will help you. So the first thing you might think about, and this is in no order of importance, they are all equally as important, I think. But most people overemphasize on the coaching element. Most people think it's just about having a good coach. And coaching is important because that's where obviously skill development, plays, tactics, strategy, executing, the technical side of things. You can't argue. It's very important to have a good coach that knows what they're doing and can help and can do all those four things. Um, I have a book that I get the coaches that I wrote that I get the coaches doing called Truth About Great Coaching. And I talk about all this in a lot of detail as part of my mentoring for the coaches. Then mentoring is about the how and the who. So I've spoken a lot about judgment, being able to make decisions, your identity, career, the decisions you make for your career, how you deal with setbacks. Bad things happen to all of us. All of us have disappointments. Even with doing WESIE for however many years, I still get disappointed along the line. But most people won't know because they still see us consistently, in spite of the challenges, consistently doing what we do, which is organizing competitions, mentoring, etc. So, and that's where good mentorship can help you as an athlete in your career and essentially make you ready to be selected. Ensure that you're ready to be selected and chosen. Then the support system, a lot of people don't talk about this. Again, this is something I think that is unique about WESIE because essentially we are focused on the mentoring and the support element of thing, health and recovery. Your ability to recover um, is often tied to your performances. If you can recover from injury, if you can recover from bad decisions you make, if you can recover you know, from incidents that happen when you're competing, that will help you. How do you do that? Again, by having the right support network and around you, being healthy. We at WESIE Academy, I know I've written a lot of free health courses. I've got a lot more in the pipeline because I know that holistic health is really important. And some of the things that you need to think about when it comes to good health as an athlete is a little bit different from the everyday person. For example, as a woman, most women in sports end up having children a bit later than others because especially those that do very well and those that want to go the distance because it takes a lot of commitment and dedication and having a baby in itself comes with its own challenge. But the older you are, sometimes the more challenging it can. And it's not that you can't, but people need to be aware of things like that. So I'm bringing out something towards that as well. So then the mental health and well-being. Sometimes when you love a sport so much, you're passionate, you can feel down if things are not going the way you would like or you're not getting selected. And it's important keep your spirits up. It's important you're able to manage your mental health and well-being as well. In fact, that's really important. And a lot of people don't think about that when they're thinking about developing themselves.